Hey everybody, this is Jason Stallings, and welcome to the Artifice Podcast and Jason Stallings Art. Today I want to talk to you a little bit, kind of a follow-up on my last video, but I want to kind of give a soft announcement of a book that I wrote over summer and the fall of 2025 that centers around the creative process. In my last video about my painting Vanitas Redacted, I kind of briefly touched on the idea of sitting with your feelings, processing emotion, and kind of using that as a healthy way to, both therapeutically process information and your emotions, but also use it as a creative vehicle. The kind of onus of the book initially began as me writing a kind of like cookbook concept. And, one day that may still happen, but I realized that I don't quite have the culinary like training professionally. I mean, I have a lot of, personal background with my family and in my family, just learning how to work with food and cook and flavors and all that stuff. But yeah, the basically that turned into like one chapter on, processing what you are listening to and using examples of that in abstract art, like how Kandinsky used to do, other artists, things like that, to translate it into things like color and shape and line and texture. So that also turned into things like, okay, like how do you translate like the feeling of a headache or like an emotion, like a form of emotional pain or calm. And I even like for the food one, I even made a batch of really great and unique pesto that I like to make. It has some unique additions like sage and Italian parsley, pesto is a pretty complicated thing to make. It's actually pretty labor intensive, but it's a lot of fun and it's really delicious. In any case, the buildup of that was to encourage anybody who's interested in actually learning about art, like what actually goes into the process of like developing the skills to become a professional artist. And there's a lot of people who I guess don't really go through that process fully, like to just act like it's unnecessary. Well, that's how you get people who pump out AI slop. And I don't want to get too much into that. I feel like that's an entire video of itself where I'd have to go on a very long, detailed rant, like what my feelings about AI and AI art, which I believe is very negative and predatory. And effectively, I think for the purposes of this video, it's worth mentioning that utilizing a tool like that incorrectly, if at all, is sort of surrendering your cognitive abilities and your creative and critical thinking to companies that, frankly, don't have your own interest in mind. I mean, and even at worst are, blatantly and aggressively destructive. So, again, longer conversation for another time. But yeah, the onus of the book was to kind of like collect my thoughts, and ultimately the last chapter or so deals with creating a kind of a broader concept around like the seven ancient wonders of the world and travel and cultural exploration. I had always had this interest in things like Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown and travel shows, things like that. The one that Discovering Italy with Stanley Tucci's show I really like. I did travel a little bit when I was younger, my late teens, and saw some pretty cool things in the world, and that really translated and transformed the way I see things. And I think anybody, if you get a chance to do that, even if you have a curiosity about exploring something in the comfort of your own home, it's worth it. It enlightens you, it grows you, it makes you a more whole person, in my opinion. And it's a shame that we've sort of lost this ability, or just, foresight and interest and curiosity. So, yeah, the illustrations were sort of a way of me like kind of touching back on some of my background and history. But ultimately, I will translate those drawings into from watercolor drawings into abstract pieces. I've already started one of them, but the other kind of motivating factor behind that was last year I submitted a proposal to the Mesquite Art Center. Somebody I know that is involved in there, and I had a body of work, but I'd realized that I didn't have a unifying theme or concept that would really drive that into a consistent like narrative. And I mean, there's a question of like, is that necessary or not? I think that who knows? But it's easier to sell something that has a beginning, middle, end as far as a narrative thread. And part of the reason that like individual paintings of mine have like contain stories goes back to studying editorial processes where you have like one story that fits in to one image and you move on to the next thing. That's sort of how illustration works as a intellectual practice, for lack of a better description. But other than that, I have sought feedback from friends and family and peers about the sort of like possible directions of this book. That still remains to be seen, but the sort of creative end of it was it blossomed and continued my interest in making art. And I think when we sort of had this narrative and this idea pushed that, well, you don't have to put the effort or thought into it. And I'm like, I beg to differ and disagree. If that is the thing that is removed for me, either through sales force or otherwise, then what's the point in continuing as an artist? I just don't see it. Some people thrive off of making simple things, and that's fine. I don't see any reason to judge that for their own needs. But it's an individual basis kind of thing. But for me, like I need to continue to dig deeper and explore, things like intellectual pursuits and things that have emotional depth and complexity to them in order to be satisfied. That's sort of the reason people get into making art, is they have either a need to explore or to express. And as long as you keep that in mind, I think it keeps your drive for creativity healthy, even when the business side of it may be kind of up and down as it is. It's the reality of it. But yeah, no, I just wanted to kind of follow up on the motivations of my last piece and how that can kind of shift. I mean, the seven ancient wonders of the world concept was to basically say, okay, like, where did society begin in an abstract sense? How is it expressed? What was these things in the Middle East, Mediterranean area, Africa, and Greece, and parts of Europe that really expressed a level of like intellectual pursuit in our early society. And the only thing that really exists still to this day that is from that list of seven wonders is the Great Pyramids of Giza. And the one that you have the Temple of Zeus, the Mausoleum Halicarnassus, the Great Pyramids, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and Colossus of Rhodes, and I might be missing one or two of the other ones. Oh yeah, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, and I'm sure if there's one I'm missing, I'll remember it later. But yeah, these were things that sort of represented something about our culture and our society. And as I went through these things, each panel or collection of drawings was a representation of a different continent, like Europe, South America, Oceania, Africa, North America, Antarctica, and Europe. I think that, yeah. Sure if there's something I'm missing. I'll remember later. Oh, Asia, yeah. So yeah, that's where all of that came from, and it was, it's fulfilling. Like, oh yeah, here's an example of, yeah, one of them. This is actually this kind of gives you an idea of where they started. This was the point of what I did is it's upside down. I basically drew out a collection of drawings, scanned them, put them in panels in Photoshop. Then I printed that out, kind of did them, painted them with watercolor. Then cleaned them up and printed them out again. And sometimes I did like multiple iterations and takes to kind of get a level of like creative depth or vision, like color and sense that I would be kind of unexpected. Like there's probably a few different layers of colors in these illustrations from Asia. Actually, so the lettering was sort of an experiment. I later removed that. Yeah, there's things in here like the that is a representation of Zoroastrianism, which is a very ancient pre-Abrahamic religion, and you have the reclining Buddha, which is in Thailand, which is actually something I saw when I was like 17 or 18. And you ascend on this really cool, like, long set of stairs in northern Thailand, and eventually you get to the top of this temple. You have to take your shoes off. You have to be very quiet and respectful. It's a very moving experience. Yeah, the Antarctica one was, this is the Temple of Zeus. Yeah. So yeah, the one that was interesting was the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which I originally had set up with Africa, but I realized that it was technically something, if it existed, which there's some debate about, that it would have been far in West Asia, basically in the Middle East, like modern day Baghdad, I believe. And this is South America. I think this is one of my favorite ones. That is the I think Temple of Athena, or Temple of Artemis. I'm a little fuzzy on it. Again, this is what happens when you work on things for months and you have to kind of refresh your mind. But yeah, I think one of my favorite ones is the collection of drawings. This is Angel Falls, which is in Venezuela. It's like the tallest continuous waterfall in the world. You have, like things like nature, things that are unique, things that are products that come from different continents, like cacao, coffee. You have unique things that are like the pink dolphins in the Amazon, things that exist and people are like, oh, you never would think in a million years. Then you have, like, this is probably the most straightforward one. This is the European kind of set of illustrations, but this is one of the last ones I did, and I wanted to keep this one a little more simple and minimalistic. But the Sagrada Familia in Spain, which is something I saw when I was about 18. I really want to see that finished. I saw it like 2002 or 1. Yeah, 2002, I believe. And it was still very much under construction. But even then, like this is like over hundreds of years of construction, and it was beautiful. Yeah, the North American one was interesting because I wanted to capture like not just the United States, but like the parts of like Canada and Mexico, like the mythology of these places. Yeah, no, it was a really fun project, and moving forward, I think that this may be an approach I take in terms of like building a larger body of work, because what I can do, and what I learned from my last show, is that I had like drawings that kind of showed off like the creative process of in progress. Like you have different drawings, sketches that kind of like give people more context for the finished pieces. So when I do end up finishing this other, series, you will see the process that went into it, and maybe different ways I can interpret it. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and looking forward to it. And eventually some of these illustrations may make their way on to like a shirt or something like that. My thinking is I will have one section with the finished piece, and the back it'll have the illustrations, which could be kind of cool. Anyway, yeah, thank you for watching, and I'm really happy to share this part of my process with you. I'm in Dallas, and we're completely snowed in. That's why I look a little raggedy today. But yeah, I hope you have a wonderful January and stay safe. And yeah, thank you for watching. If you want to check out my work or look at anything up, like a book or shirts or anything like that, go to jason-stallings.com. I'll see you soon.